Well, hello, folks, and welcome to the Diener Melhorn Fishing Podcast. I hope you're having a good day, whatever day it is that you happen to be listening to the show or watching it on YouTube. All of the podcasts, there's a video version that you can check out on YouTube, so you can listen to them or watch them. I appreciate all the regulars dropping back in, and all the new folks, welcome. I hope you enjoy this. I'm going to talk about something today. I got an email from somebody, and I've gotten emails, texts from a lot of people, with fishing questions. A lot of them I address in the podcast, as y'all well know, and also in the videos that I put up online. But this one was particularly somewhat funny, not funny, the way it was written. And it starts out like a lot of them. I've been watching your videos for a while. And he said, let's get down to it. He said, I have gone out with a local guide on several occasions and just filled the coolers with catfish. I learned how he sets up his lines and how he uses his bait, and I even marked where he took us every time. Got the old phone out there punching in some waypoints. That's good. The whole idea was to learn how to do it ourselves, and I've got a lot of people that book me on guide trips that do the same thing. They are doing it as a learning experience. Nothing wrong with that. He goes on to say that they go out fishing, and he says, we've gone out at all hours of the day and night in the same places the guide takes us, using the same bait and the same setup exactly. He said, we can't catch a catfish to save our you-know-what. I'm at the point of claiming there's some kind of BS going on. He's saying this jokingly, I hope. And it's getting very frustrating. He must have a diver down there in the water hooking up the fish. Any of y'all that have been on a boat with me know that I do the little diver thing into one of the pipe holders. It sounds like you're talking to somebody underwater. So there's a lot of humor in that. He said, I'd appreciate if you would go over this topic and talk a little bit about it, give us some feedback. And he wanted me to email him back, but instead of typing all this stuff out, I'm going to talk to you guys about it for a little bit because I think this is something that pertains to a lot of people out there. So it's a good topic. One, I think going out with a guide to learn how they fish, how they do things, see them do it is a good idea. I think it's a great idea. It's a good way to learn. It's a good way to reinforce what you may be doing or not doing. It may show you that, hey, maybe I need to be trying this. So nothing wrong with that. As far as marking spots, there are some guides that are very adamant about no handheld cellular devices to mark anything with. I could care less whether you mark where we fish at or not, because from one day to the next, things change. And I think that's probably the thing I was going to talk about here more than anything is that if you've been on a guided trip with me, especially here the past couple of years, people have heard me say, man, it worked here yesterday. And, it may or may not work today. Stuff changes. There's a lot of variables that come into play. And I think you'd have to have a pretty good stock of a lot of different places to go try. Sometimes, especially on my trips, when certain things are not working that I think is working, I try something out of the ordinary, and that's where the fish are caught. And part of that is, knowing what to look for and what to fish when you find these certain things. That is something that takes experience. So I don't think the guide has any voodoo magic going on here. I think the biggest thing he's got is experience and confidence in what he's doing. And now, depending on what's going on, there are certain times to where certain things will work repeatedly back-to-back days on end. That can happen. And that's going to vary depending with the body of water you're fishing. Now, for this gentleman, he's talking about a very specific body of water and doing the exact same thing in the exact same places he did. I think you can try that. I think you could go out with a guide and go back and fish the exact same spot and try it. But I would not bank your entire day or your entire trip on that. What I would be paying more attention to in these situations and asking the question, if he's like me, I love questions on a boat. I tell people it's like a seminar on the water. You can ask questions and I can show you stuff in particular. I would be asking the questions, not so much marking the spot into Why are we fishing here right now? What is it that works? What is it that you like? Because that answer may not pertain to that place tomorrow, but it may pertain to a point 200 yards away tomorrow. So why he's there and why he's fishing there is probably more important than knowing the exact spot. Now, some people will fish places, as I call it, chasing for ghosts. They're just going to chase after the ghosts of the fish that they caught yesterday, the day before, something like that. We all have our honey holes. We all have our little milk run that we make. And those places are places that, 6 out of 10 times will produce fish under the right conditions. But, for you as an angler, you can do that with their places, but there's going to be a lot of variables that come into play. And that one place that he rolled up onto and fished with you may have been a fluke. It may have been a one-off deal. He may have seen some bait busting on top of the water and decided to fish it, and boom, you caught some fish. And, he, like you, may go back to that place 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times and not catch a fish. So I think it's better when you're out with a guy to understand all of the dynamics of what they're doing and why they're doing it versus fishing the exact same spot. I mean, it takes some time and some confidence to know that what you're doing is effective and works. I feel with great confidence that I can go out on any reservoir. I'm not a big river fisherman. I don't have that confidence fishing rivers as much, constant flowing rivers like the Mississippi, Missouri, Ohio, those type of rivers. But I feel like I can go on any reservoir and in a reasonable amount of time, catch fish or find fish. May not find the biggest fish in there, but I feel like I can catch fish. And I would feel sure that probably this guy that you're going with has that same confidence on the body of water that he is fishing. And so that's what I would say do. Focus more, if you're going to go with a guide, on how they do things, and then ask them why they're doing things. Listen, last week, ran several trips, and it was a lot of struggling. We ended up catching fish. The numbers were pretty good. We were catching like 14 to 18 fish a day, but those, medium-sized fish we couldn't find. And, the smaller fish were there. Luckily, a couple of these people were keeping fish to eat, so some of these smaller eater-sized fish were great. We picked off a few in the upper teens. That was great. But, the medium-sized fish were not there. So I say all that to say I covered a lot of water. I tried a lot of different things. I was trying some different things. As I was going, I was explaining to the people what we were doing and why we were doing it. And, they appreciate that. They learn something from it, and it gives you something to think about, if you're going out with somebody. Some people, they go out with a guide, could care less what they're doing. They just want to go out and have a good time and forget about it. But for a lot of people, like this gentleman, a lot of you that are watching, they're trying to learn something. A lot of the people that watch this channel are trying to learn something. So that's my biggest advice in getting out there. And what I would say to this gentleman who went to those exact same spots, did the exact same thing, and didn't catch fish, I'd go somewhere else. I mean, that's the short answer. I would, I would try some. I wouldn't give those spots too much time, is what it comes down to. Just because he caught fish there, I wouldn't sit there for 3 hours waiting for a fish to bite. I would be up and moving and trying some different things. There's a lot of variables. The time of day could play a big part in it, especially when you get what we've got going on where I'm at now, very stable water conditions. Nothing is changing. It's summertime, there's boat traffic. I think there's a lot goes on with a bite cycle during that time period. So, you may just be there at the wrong time. And then if you change it around and go, a day later and, the same time, you may catch fish. I've always said that if you could fish 24 hours a day and be out there from sun up to sundown, I think you would catch fish. No matter how bad the bite is, you would get onto a decent little window of catching fish. So sometimes, you could be out there fishing at sunrise one day on a Monday and go, man, that was terrible. That sucked. I'm going to go back Saturday and I'm going to go at, midnight in the middle of the night. Well, you could be on a rotation where there's just not a good bite at night during that time period. So I say all this, and, it's hard to fish spots. It will burn the best fishermen out there. When you are just going to spots that work. It's a gamble. You're fishing for ghosts, as I've said before. So don't get locked in to those spots, even if a guide fishes them. Even if you've caught fish there before, it's great to check them out. We did that on a trip yesterday. I had a place in mind. I was like, man, I'm gonna hit this place before daylight. It's a great point. It's a steep ledge. We rolled up on it, and man, there wasn't nothing there. I mean, there was a few bait fish, but none of the big fish were there that were there a day before. Were they 200-300 yards up and down the bank? I don't know. I don't know where they went. Didn't spend a whole lot of time looking for them. But that's a place that has produced some big fish for me over the years. Some good fish, some good numbers. But there was nothing there that day, that morning. And, I was excited to get out there and hit that one. The guide trip party was willing to get out here super early. And, man, we rode that edge, and there was nothing there. I packed up and left. There's no real point to fish there, no matter how big a fish you've caught there, how good it's been. If you're trying to target fish and catch them, you're better off looking for an area that's holding some fish at least. Now, there's some places you can fish blind without seeing anything on your sonar. I've said that about fishing shallow. The only reason I run sonar when I'm running up into shallow water is to make sure I've still got enough water underneath me to get the boat into it, because in 2 or 3 feet of water, it's not doing you any good. Those kind of places I fish blind. If you were going there with a guide, then, and you were trying to, jump his spot, go in there and try that, but I wouldn't give it long. I'd give it maybe 30, 45 minutes, and then I'd pull up and move and hit another spot. That's the thing with shallow water fishing. You've heard me say it before in videos. They're either there or they're not there. So, I will say this to the gentleman here, and this always comes up in some of the saltwater fishing forums about, spots that guides fish. There are guides, and this varies depending on the fishery. And where you're fishing at, that if you have a guide that has a milk run that is hitting this point, every morning that he takes people out, I will say this: have some respect for him and give him those spots. I think they deserve those spots because it's their sweat and blood and effort that is put into finding those places. So it's public water. You can fish it if you want to. I just think it's a respect thing, especially if you want to keep a relationship with that guide. That if they're there, park there at daylight, let them have it. After they leave, go fish it if you want to. But I'll tell you this, if they're parked on a point and catching fish right at daylight, I guarantee you there's a point right around there that's doing the same thing. So again, I don't think it's the spot as much as it is the conditions. And I think you'll hear that from tournament fishermen too, that are repeatedly successful in winning big tournaments and catching fish, is that some of them will have a run on a certain lake where they'll hit certain spots that they like. But I think the guys that are winning now are fishing the conditions and fishing what is working. I've seen good tournament anglers in the past that have done really, really good, and the places they're fishing were producing fish. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's mussels, bait congregating there or what, it works for a while. It may work for a couple, 2 or 3 years, and then it starts to wane, and they end up chasing those ghosts that used to be there. And that's why I say pay more attention to the conditions and what's going on, and I think you'll have better success in finding fish and catching fish. So I appreciate the question. This is a good one. I enjoyed it, and there's some humor in here, but there's also some frustration. His last line was, "This skunk is costing me a lot of time and money." The great thing is you're getting an education in the process, and pay attention to why it's not working. That's another thing. When you rolled up into these places, even where this guide fished, look around on that sonar. Was there fish there? Was there bait there? Was there nothing there? Pay attention to that. You're learning from these lessons. I've been out there plenty of times fishing where I beat my head into the wall. Do it now as a guide. There are days where it's just like, man, why does this not work? And a lot of those times, it's like yesterday and the day before, we just resort to making changes, big changes. That's one thing I will say. I'm a believer that if I'm anchored on a point and it's not working right here, I'm not going to move 200 yards. I'm going to move, 2 miles, 3 miles. I try to make big changes because I think that seems to work better. But that's my take on that. That is content for another entire podcast that we can talk about that. So appreciate you guys checking it out. We'll catch you out on the water.